there's so much intrigue with this because the Smithson family and the history of the Smithsonian Institute is something that we never talk too much about. There's just incredible underground storage vaults in the Smithsonian Institute where they kind of, it's like I call it informational Area 51, where things that aren't quite fitting the normal pattern of what people want or told they need to know about are hidden away. One of the big things is this underground cavern system was uncovered in the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Now let me just say that the archaeological history that we've been fed as we go through the public school system is so ludicrous, really. The Grand Canyon was actually not a small river carving it through millions of years. The fact is, with the Uinta Basin, all the inland ocean that was all part of that, something cataclysmic happened, fracturing of the rock around the time of 30 AD that caused a massive amount of water to go out over a short period of time and carve the Grand Canyon out. I want to say that there's plenty of evidence of that happening. It's some say it's revisionist history or an alternative reality, but no, it's just archaeologically and completely. And if you look at geography, it makes all the sense in the world if you look at topographical maps. Okay.
Now traveling into New Mexico, here we have the message right here, and we have a lone symbol up here. There would have been a handprint over this. Would have been the signature of the person that left this message. Professor Barbara Rock, who is also an epigrapher, tried a lot of different ways to decipher these symbols, and she struck out on all accounts until she tried using Demotic Egyptian, and then she used every one of these symbols as a compound symbol, meaning she broke them all down into smaller symbols. She said when she did that it read like a story, and her interpretation of this was that it had raining for a long time. There was great floods and the waters was raising. They tried dual sacrifices, but that didn't work, so they was burying their valuables and the records of their peoples and headed for the tops of the mountains for safety.
So that said, we see the beginning of this when Major Powell did his first expedition down the Grand Canyon. Everybody thought he was crazy as a loon. You know, there's this one-armed major was lost his arm in the Civil War, coming down in the 1870s after the conclusion of the Civil War to basically map this great river. They thought he would never make it out. If you look at the Powell Museum there in Page, Arizona, there's little boats and they go over the cataracts and the massive amount of water. It was an amazing feat to come down. But he survived, as we know. He had a Native American Navajo guide that basically took him down, not expecting to even know if he'd survived the trip. It was a massive leap of faith, really. So they explained this is in the congressional record because Powell wrote everything in his report to Congress, and he explains what he found looking up at this cave, which was quite a ways up from where the river was flowing in 1870s. And as the explanation went, he went up into it, was able to rock climb up to there's like a keyhole opening that was not natural. It was absolutely carved. And he went in and was shocked with what they found in there.
Sometime in the early 90s, I became aware of an Egyptian artifact that was found in Pocatello, Idaho. It was a piece of alabaster rock that was the size and shape of a chicken egg, and it had some markings on it. This egg was found in 1918, this rock egg, by a young girl. For whatever reason, she kept it all her life, and when she became older, she developed cancer. Anyways, her granddaughter was there visiting her, and she happened to come across it, so she gave it to her granddaughter. that granddaughter kept it all her life because it was something special that was given to her by her grandmother before she passed away. In 1977, this lady, Kathy Kincaid, was in the dentist's office, and this was the time that King Tut's tomb was making its rounds in the United States, the artifacts out of his tomb, and the Smithsonian Magazine put out an article on it, and Kathy was in the dentist office and reading that Smithsonian article, and she seen in there the exhibits of King Tut's tomb, and that there was markings, the exact same markings that was on this egg that her grandmother gave her. The exact same markings was on King Tut's tomb. Well, all these years from 1918, they always thought that these things were Indian markings that were on this egg. So anyway, she took this egg down to the University of Berkeley and had them look at it, and they authenticated that it was a piece of alabaster that came from Egypt, and that the markings on this egg was King Tut's high priest signature on one side of the rock and the cartouche of his name on the other. Now keep in mind that they didn't break into King Tut's tomb until 1922, yet this Egyptian alabaster egg was found in Pocatello, Idaho in 1918 before they ever knew anything about King Tut. So just the two things was found, the egg and that rock?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's whatever it is. I have no idea.
Huh. Wow.
Strangest looking thing you ever saw, but it's pretty, so I kept it.
Yeah, really.
I'm amazed that I kept these things, too. I threw them in my dresser drawer. I was young when she gave them to me.
Oh, really?
So I just kind of threw them in my drawer thinking, oh, how cute.
Yeah, that is amazing you kept it, because I know all that stuff I had. I've thrown away.
Well, you know how I was sitting in the dentist's office and reading the Smithsonian Magazine.
Uh-huh.
And an article just came out about the opening of King Tut's tomb.
Oh, uh-huh.
And I saw the same cartouche on all of his artifacts that was on my egg. And
wow.
That's the only way I ever knew anything about it, or that it even was Egyptian, but it is definitely Egyptian alabaster. So how it got to Idaho, I probably will never know.
Yeah.
Because I just don't have the money or the inclination to have it. So, but it is Egyptian alabaster.
Absolutely Egyptian artifacts galore inside. So he didn't have time, of course, to do a full-scale excavation, but in his report to Congress, he made mention of it. Well, that, of course, garnered the attention of the Smithson family, and the Smithsonian Institute sponsored a second trip through, this time loaded with photography equipment to document what was in there. This was a few years after the initial expedition. And so the Smithsonian Institute went in there and, my goodness, took all kinds of pictures. And instead of going on down the river, they actually hiked up to the top of the rim and went overland from there to map that out. Okay, that's part of the unknown history of the early expeditions of the Grand Canyon. So we fast forward from the 1870s, when this information became public. It was kind of, the end of the 1800s, the early 1900s. The world goes to war, right? We have the Great War. At the conclusion of the Great War, a guy named G.E. Kincaid, who is an employee of the Smithsonian Institute, he's survives the Great War, comes in, and he's funded by Smithsonian to go back in and look for that lost cavern system. So Kincaid does that, goes in under the disguise of mineral exploration, prospecting, okay, and he locates the exact same Powell Cave, goes in with his photography equipment, and brings out a massive amount of precious metal artifacts. Comes up over the top of the rim. He's so excited about what he's found, he makes a press release, and the local newspapers all front page headlines: amazing find in the Grand Canyon. I had all these these things, the actual news articles on my blog, atruewatt.com, which was all from, again, the Smithsonian Institute. Well, my blog was shut down and erased, actually, in December of 2019, okay? With no warning, it was just taken offline. So the question that people ask me is, where'd you get these pictures? Well, I had he's now deceased, so I can talk about him now. A friend named Dr. Melvin Laney in Washington, D.C. had high-level security clearance, and he had full unfettered access to the Smithsonian's archives. He sent me this information tied into what I'm working in the property here in Utah. A whole other story for another time. But it tied in, most definitely ties in, this story of G.E. Kincaid and the amazing discoveries at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Massive amounts of mummies. And the big thing is, Terry, is there were thousands and thousands of panels of Egyptian hieroglyphics that have been interpreted. And what it tells the story of should rewrite all the world's history, frankly. Huh. Because it's none other than the biblical Joseph of Egypt and his history.
Wow.
Yeah, big time wow. It's exciting. And, well, even religionists are saying, well, that's a real stretch. Well, why? It proves the Bible and the story in Genesis of Joseph to be true. The coat of many colors being sold into Egypt. It answers the question, really. It was more than just a deal with Potiphar's wife that elevated Joseph to be the most powerful vizier, in second only to the Pharaoh himself. It tells the story of how he ascended to, and why he was able to bring all the grains and survive the famines that went on. It's all in the history of this cave in the bottom of the Grand Canyon. It's an amazing story.